This is episode 317 of Jumblethink.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Jumblethink, where we interview dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers all about their journey of turning their dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's show is Tracy Timm. More about Tracy in a moment. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime fan, if you've never subscribed to Jumblethink, head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts, search for Jumblethink, and click that magical subscribe button. Now let's jump into today's conversation. Hey there, welcome to Jumblethink. My name's Michael Woodward. I am your host, and we have a super fun conversation lined up for you today. So whether you're hunkered down in isolation because of coronavirus, or you simply want to turn those dreams and ideas into reality, we're here for the next, probably about an hour to talk about dreams and ideas. To do that, we have an incredible conversation with Tracy Timm lined up for you. Tracy is a career strategist and human capital advisor. Her program, the Nth Degree Academy, helps high-potential professionals discover their career sweet spots through a mix of self-discovery, tactical training, and some much-needed tough love. Tracy has a degree in behavioral psychology from Yale. She's worked on Wall Street and has logged one trip around the entire globe. She believes that our unique purpose in life can be realized through our careers and wants to help people come alive at work again. Now let's join the conversation we had with today's guest, Tracy Timm. We are here with Tracy Timm. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, Michael. I'm so excited. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, you're probably in day 3 of the coronavirus lockdown. Are you surviving?
I'm a survivor. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I am, though, as I mentioned to you earlier, a textbook extrovert.
Yeah.
So this is like my nightmare, right? I think it's an introvert's dream. I get to be at home and work from home with my cats. This is great. But for me, I thrive around other people. So it is more of a mental challenge right now for me than I would say it's a physical challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it all pans out. We're going to talk a lot about your background. We're going to talk a lot about finding ideal careers. Before we want to dive into that, and I didn't really mention that I wanted to ask you this, but
sure.
As a business person who is an entrepreneur running your own business, your business is your brand of yourself, and you're really sharing that with what you do, whether it's speaking, whether it's creating the online courses, whether it's the other things that you have going on. How are you navigating coronavirus in the business? What are some of the strategies you're using to stay connected in a physically detached situation from each other? How are you staying really on top of this for your business?
Yeah, this is a really great question. I feel right now as though I'm very fortunate. We are very fortunate that our number one selling program and our most profitable program, thankfully, also happens to be a guided online experience.
Yeah.
So we have this really wonderful, well built out curriculum. And then the reason that it is a coaching program is because, yes, you're given all of that content to consume, at your own time and schedule, but then you have weekly check-ins with a cohort and with a coach. So you get that same community aspect. You're talking to the same people every single week, and your coach is following up with you almost daily with your exercises and that sort of thing. So it's built into our business already. So I'm very fortunate with that. We do, though, also host once monthly in-person experiences as well in the form of workshops. Now, we keep them very small. Like historically, they're 5 to 10 people max, so that we can go really deep, really fast, and people get the results that they're looking for. So we actually have our next one coming up in about 2 weeks from the date of this recording, and still, it's maybe 5 people have registered, right? And people are still nervous. About coming to that. And so that's actually a decision we're going to have to make today as to whether or not we want to take that online, if that's even possible. But I think the primary thing is really taking advantage of this being a big moment of transition for people, right? There are a few times I think in just our everyday life that our autopilot is questioned and we're forced to do things that are out of the ordinary or out of routine. And if you're working from home right now and you still are miserable, right? And maybe you thought, oh, what if I had a job that had freedom and flexibility and I would love that, but now you have it and you're like, oh, this isn't any better. Those are our ideal people. So right now it's my job to make sure that we're getting our message out there in front of the right people because the timing is ripe.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. I think a lot of people are thinking that there's going to be a lot of contraction business wise and people maybe not spending money or what have you. I think if you're already in transition, it's that much easier to take on another one, so to speak, right? If your brain's already been forced out of its routine and its day to day, then you thinking, hey, maybe I could make a career change, or maybe this is the right time, or maybe look at all this time I have on my hands because I'm stuck at home.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the time where I could invest in something like that and I could actually give it the focus that it deserves. It's been a really interesting thing. Last week I was like, you know what? We're a small business. This doesn't affect us. Everything's fine. We're just going to keep going. I don't want to add to the myriad of COVID-19 emails that everyone's getting from this, that, and the other place that has nothing to do with the virus. I didn't want to add to the mayhem. Yeah. But now that I think we're at week 2-ish and settling into a slightly different routine and more information is coming out, I think this week is going to be really important for us to be consistently communicating with the people who are already a part of our growing community, already on our email list, and then getting more of the right people to understand what it is that we do and how this is the right time for them to engage with us.
Well, I love that conversation, and we're going to dive into more of that curiosity of how you discover the perfect career and talk about transitions a little bit more in our second segments. Yeah. And I love what you were saying there, right, a second ago about the fact that there are these kind of flash moments in history in which it causes people to rethink. You look at September 11th, of course, is the one that is etched into many of our minds, or you look at Katrina at a much more localized level. These are the conversations you hear pop up when you hear about it was a moment in time that changed everything. Mm-hmm. And, I think that people are afraid of the uncertainty, but fear is, one of those things that's fueled by unanswered questions. And when you're looking at COVID-19 and you're looking at, we just don't simply know what the data is going to be about. Well, what do we know? What can we know? What can we create? What can we do to pivot that mindset to say, you know what, these things are outside of my control, but what can I do to make that pivot to bring it back to my place of control? I've been working on some programs internally that we're doing and launching some ideas for the fall and using this time to reflect and say, these are things I've wanted to work on. These are conversations I've wanted to have. Now people are willing and able to have it, and now we can make that pivot. It's exciting times, I think. And I think that, yes, it's scary, and yes, there are a lot of unknowns, but there's a lot to be excited about too.
Yeah. And those are the people that I think are going to take this and run with it and do good with the chaos. Yeah. It's not that we want to be taking advantage of people or taking advantage of a situation, but I think there are pivotal moments. If you look for them, it could be whatever your business is. Those moments could happen annually. They could happen semi-annually. They could happen seasonally. But if you're tuned in to your people and you just know who you're there to serve, then you're going to know what they're thinking at any given time. Like, I know that my ideal person is sitting at home right now and potentially listening to this and going, crap, I thought working from home was going to fix it. And I still don't like this. Like, something else is wrong. Yeah. And so if I can speak to that, then they're like, oh my God, she's in my brain. She knows me. Right. So that's the key. If you're a business owner, you're thinking about it. It's like, you deeply have to know who you serve, and the way that they know that you know how to serve them is that you know how they feel. Yeah. It's not that you know the solution to their problem and this and that and all these features and benefits. It's, if I can get inside that person's brain and they know that I know them the best, they're not going to want to work with anybody else because they don't think anybody else understands them the way that you and I do. You know what I mean?
Completely. Yeah. It's, for us in the web agency, which we ran for 13 years, the simple answer for what we did was saying, we understand your pain and we're going to solve your problem. They didn't care about the end solution. They just cared that it solved the problem. And
Right.
and they're like, I don't care if you use WordPress, I don't care if you use Drupal, I don't care if you use the Man on the Moon. All I care is that it solves my problem for the business. And for you sharing about that right now, about, understanding the pain of what people are going through around you and empathizing with it, and then giving those solutions to say, I hear your pain, I'm speaking your language, I understand what you're going through. Now's the time to really engage. Now's not the time to shrink back and just be afraid. Now's the time to push into new possibilities. As we pivot here in the first segment back to what we typically talk about, although this is really important and I definitely want to talk more about it, and we're going to continue that in the second segment. I want to hear a little bit about your spark moment. You go to Yale, you study behavioral psychology, you end up on Wall Street being a bond saleswoman, and then you travel the world. You've had kind of an interesting path to what you're doing today. What was that spark to say, I have something unique to offer here, and what I'm doing doesn't work for me anymore? What was that personal moment of I've got to make a pivot here for yourself?
Yeah. So it's funny that you ask it in the framework of like, what's the moment? Because I would actually say that there were a handful of moments, and each one of them built on the previous one. Yeah. And whenever I describe this like, it's almost like it comes in waves of realization. Everybody's like, oh my God, I totally get it. Because the first thing that you have to do is recognize that there's a problem, right? Yeah. If you're not aware that this is not sustainable, what you're going through, that it's not healthy, what you're going through, that it's not normal, what you're going through, then you're just going to continue to think like, oh, this is just how things are. So you have to have a level of awareness. And I remember that was one of my pivotal moments where I had this with of mine, and I tell this story a lot, but I'll just give you the bullet points. We were taking literally a 5-minute break, which is our only break every day, and we were out on the terrace of our office, and I casually noticed that there was some construction going on next to our building. Yeah. And without missing a beat, the guy I was talking to launches into this diatribe about bridges and construction and the wintertime and cement and the number of, workers that you need and what they're doing specifically and how bridges expand. And like, oh my gosh, I just stared at him and I stared at the bridge and I stared at him and I stared at the bridge. And I was like, who are you? I saw this human that I had worked with every day for a year, come alive and gush about something. And I was like, when was the last time I gushed about bonds? Like never. When was the last time I gushed about models and spreadsheets? Never. When was the last time I gushed about how much I loved where I worked? Never. Right. And so I saw this alternate reality that I had never even been exposed to of like, hey, this could be how you talk about what you do, So there was that moment. Then there was the moment of, okay, I recognize that, but cognitive dissonance, right? Well, I can't leave, so I have to pretend like I like it. Or maybe that realization is true for other people, but not for me. I mean, we talk ourselves out of things like that so easily because your brain and your body psychologically can't live at odds with each other for very long. It's just not sustainable. That's what's called cognitive dissonance. Yeah. It's when your mindset versus your actions are different, and that causes tension in your body. And so you either have to change what your body is doing, like go do something else to match your beliefs, or you change your beliefs. And for most of us, it's a lot easier to just change what we think than it is to change what our physical body is doing, right? Yeah. So I stayed in that job still after that. Then I remember, so then the next thing that happened was I went to a friend's wedding. It was a high school friend. They had gone to Notre Dame. They got married at Notre Dame. And I thought, this is what we all think when we hate our jobs, right? Oh, a 3-day weekend. This is all I need. I'm going to feel so much better after this. I'm going to go to a wedding. I love weddings. I love wine. I love dancing. I love love. I'm a hopeless romantic, all that good stuff, right? So I go and I am like a shell of myself. Wow. Like I could not stop thinking about, oh my God, it's Saturday. That means in 2 days I have to go back to work. Oh, it's Saturday night. That means in 1.5 days I have to go back. Like I couldn't let it go to the point where at the wedding reception, I was so anxious that I left the room and I went outside and like out the front door and I sat on the curb and I just started crying. Oh, wow. And this is real stuff. I mean, I think this happens to people. This is not overly dramatic. And I had a friend come out, one of my best guy friends at the time, and he just sat down next to me. He's like, what is going on? And I just sort of explained about work and whatnot. And he's like, this is not you. Yeah. Like, And it was one of the first, it was a mirror that I couldn't ignore,
Yeah.
this is not you. And I just remember being like, oh shit, like it's not me, this really isn't me. And what does that mean? Am I here on this planet to be somebody else? Hopefully not. I'm here to be me, and I get this one life, and sort of all these things rushed into my head. And I literally, Michael, no joke, got on the plane home the following day, or maybe the day after, because it was a 3-day weekend, and wrote my I quit speech.
Wow.
And I quit the next day.
Wow.
And so then the thing that really got me to do what I do now, the moment of spark of like, what does that mean for your life and your business and your career? I knew what I was doing was not what I wanted to be doing, but what kept me there was not knowing what it was I wanted to be doing. You know what I mean?
Like, so you, okay. You're like, I know I don't like what I'm doing now. I hate it, but I don't know what it is that I do like. So you're in this tension of knowing and not knowing at the same time.
Exactly. And so it feels like you're stuck, because no sane person would just leave a job just because they don't like it without a plan, without another job. And like, of course, my mom's like ringing in my ear, you never leave a job without another job. And okay, great, fine. I'll do that for as long as it's sustainable. But it got to the point where it was not sustainable. And so I had to cut ties to just allow my brain to alleviate some of the fear and the anxiety and the stress that I was experiencing every day, trying to pretend that I liked what I was doing, and just show up. Like it took all the effort I had to just get there and then do my job. It was unsustainable. And so the reason that I do what I do now is that I reached out to every resource I could think of, friends, family, school, whatever, counselors, psychologists, books, you name it, right? And I was just looking for, is there a way to figure this out? Like, is there a formula? Has somebody written like that book or that program or that thing that if I just do step one, if I spend an hour doing this, it's going to be worth it. It's going to produce results, and it's going to get me to step 2. Like, that's all I wanted. And so the moment that sticks out in my mind, and I have nothing ill to say about Yale as an institution. I have nothing ill to say about this human in particular, but I called up career services and just asked, like, do you have something like this? Yeah. Like, I don't need my resume updated. I don't need a better LinkedIn strategy. I don't need to talk to a recruiter because I don't know what the hell I want. Yeah. Like, I just want to figure that part out. And I'll tell you, I got a big sorry, like, we don't have that. Like, that's what you presumably went to school here for. You know what I mean? Like, they thought they'd done it already. Yeah. I was like, well, I loved what I studied, psychology, but I didn't want to be a counselor, and I didn't want to be a sports psychologist. I certainly didn't want to be a therapist at 22 with my own problems. And so in the absence of a very clear next step, I got swept up in what everyone else was doing, which was the finance and consulting and, taking over the business world or taking over the government world, or, you know what I mean? So anyway, so at that moment, I just remember thinking, okay, like, surely this isn't that hard to come up with. Like, if I look really hard, I can find someone else who's done it and repeat it, or someone else who's done it and make it better, or I could do it myself. And then my second thought was, I can't be the only one with this problem. Like, there's no way that I'm the only person on the planet who like did well in school, played the game, got the grades, played the sport or the instrument or whatever, got into the right school, got the right grades again, graduated with whatever honors or whatever honors I didn't get, right? And then went out into the quote unquote real world and was like, this metric system for success is not working. Yeah. Measuring it like everybody else does wasn't working.
Yeah. And I think that that's the problem, is that we're conditioned from a young age to play a specific game, which doesn't typically lead to lifelong fulfillment. And we're not taught that that's okay. And so when you get to a place of discontent, when you get to a place of I've done what I'm supposed to do, why isn't it working? Then we're left with questions of our own identity, our questions of our own insecurity, our questions of our own failures. And there aren't many people talking about that to say there's got to be a different system to play in, because the system that most people are playing in is broken and it's fracturing.
You nailed it.
People.
You nailed it. It really is. And it's not a nice to have problem.
No.
Like the thing that held me back for a long time was like, oh, Tracy, come on. This is such a first world problem. Like the young millennials are going to suck it up. They're going to do what I did. They're going to work for a couple of years. They're going to save up some money. Then they're going to go find themselves like everybody else had to. And it's almost like this fraternity mentality. Like, oh, we all have to go through this early in our careers of like, who the hell am I, and finding yourself and whatever. So the next generation, of course, has to do it.
Yeah.
And then our parents are looking at us like, oh, that must be nice. We didn't get to do that. We just had to suck it up, you know?
Yeah.
But then they created us to be the questioners and to ask and to wonder if this is all there is. And anyway, we could go off on that tangent for a long time. But you're so right. My business was hamstring for a long time because even when I knew that these were my people to serve and help, I still questioned the value of it.
Yeah.
On like almost like a moral level, you know, is this a nice to have problem, or should I be helping people who are unemployed get jobs? Is that a better problem to solve from like a value to society perspective, right? Yeah. But then I realized like we all are given the scenarios and the gifts and the curiosities and the desires and that on purpose. Like this was my group to serve because it's not a nice to have problem. It's a problem that's keeping really smart, really capable, really talented world changers stuck in really crappy jobs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what if there's this great example, and I don't think it was Martha Graham, but I think it was somebody who was just as influential in the dance world. Really early on in her childhood, it was discovered that all of her teachers thought she had this, you know, problem of like obeying the rules and sitting still and not, you know, listening to her teachers and whatever. And it was one teacher, maybe her like principal or something, who actually was like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with her. She's just a dancer. Like put her in an art school, put her in a dance school. And that one person making it okay for her to not, you know, follow the norm of like education and what her life was supposed to be and getting a regular job changed the world because of all of the joy that this one person was able to bring through dance and through choreography and through self-expression. And, you know, think about all the shows that person wrote and all the people who watched them and all the actors who were involved. Like every one of those lives was changed significantly because their quality of life went up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why it's not a nice to have or a first world-ish problem, even though, yes, am I curing cancer? No. Like, I
would argue that that's like, am I curing cancer is a bad question to answer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because is a cancer of the soul or of the heart or of the place of living not worth solving? You know, if we look at how much depression is going on,
yes,
you have to ask the question, why has there been this place of deep depression? Why are we medicating 12-year-olds and 8-year-olds for depression? Well, it has to do with something isn't right, not from a society standpoint, not from a personal standpoint. And if you have people who are buying into a specific trap of living or philosophy of living that doesn't measure up to satisfying the deeper things inside of them, then they can't engage into a place of joy and happiness because they're unfulfilled in where they're at.
Yep. And all of that presumes that like your life matters and has purpose. You know what I mean? Like, I think you have to buy into that as well. It's like, okay, it's one thing to suck it up if life is just all about sucking it up. And it's another thing to tap into, like, why are we here?
Yeah.
And if there is a purpose for your life and your career, why ignore it?
Yeah.
You know, because of somebody else's definition of success or your parents' idea of what a good job is or whatever. It's like, this is your one life, truly.
Yeah.
And presumably we get just the one, you know, I think. And so like, are you going to spend it doing things the way that everyone else does them just for the sake of like getting along with everyone else? Or isn't it? I mean, I was listening to a Macklemore song the other day. I went for a run, which there were a surprising number of people on the trail, given everything that has been going on.
Actually, I just posted about that on Facebook today about we had a guy who wrote the literal training book for half marathons and marathons on. And I'm like, you need to clear your mind. You need to get out. Go for a run. It's one of the best. Anyway, side note.
No, I know. I'm like, now, like, what are we going to do? Everybody's going to be buying Pelotons and treadmills and running. And anyway, I was listening to a Macklemore song, and he was just like, it was so clear in the lyrics, and I wish I could, do a better job of remembering even the title of the song, but you know how it goes when you're running. It just was like so clear. He's like, we're born and we live and then we're gone. And like, if in the middle you weren't yourself, if in the middle you had a song to get out that you didn't sing, like, what was the point?
Yeah.
What was the point of being here?
Yeah.
At all? Like, to me, that's, if that's resonating with you, then Michael, you're doing an amazing job in speaking to people and getting the right people to listen to this, because that woke me up.
Yeah.
Like, I remember thinking I'm not going to, okay, great, bond salesman, woohoo. Like, I make a bunch of money and what am I doing? What's the point? If I'm not myself in this existence, then why was I even here? Because it could have been somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So good. As we start going towards the end of this first segment, there's a couple questions we always ask. But before I even ask that, I haven't even asked the obvious, significant question, and that's,
what is it?
What do you do?
Yeah. No, apparently I just wax poetic about the meaning of life. So my business now exists to take those people, either the miserably employed or the person who's like, you know what, I'm done living my life and career without intention, and helping that person identify their ideal career. And we do that through a proven process that I call the nth degree. And that basically takes people through 3 steps. We want to help them first discover their true value, meaning how in the world as a professional or a human do they add value? And then we want to take all those puzzle pieces of how they add value and what they value and transition them into step 2, which is define. So to define specifically their unique zone of genius, so that when they're going out in the world, it's not, hey, here's how I fit into these pre-existing job requirements. It's, hey, here's the asset and the athlete that I am professionally. I'm offering it to you. This is how I add value, right? And then in order for them to do that really effectively, we teach them step 3, which is drive. So how do I drive my career forward with the strategies and the tactics that work for today's marketplace? And that's all about things like how to network efficiently and effectively, and what it looks like to really truly navigate your career with intention, how to nourish yourself over time. So yeah, it's a really fun, and I alluded to this a little earlier. There's a 30-day online guided program that we have that's phenomenal. It's all, guaranteed that you will leave with your niche and you'll leave with an action plan. For the time being, we still do 3-day workshops, but hey, maybe this is the impetus we needed to take our entire business online, which is fine. We find that both of the programs are just as successful. So yeah, that's what we do. We help people discover, define, and drive their ideal careers, and it's really cool work to watch.
I'm super excited in the second segment to get more into that. But as we wrap up this first segment, 3 questions we always ask. The first one being, how do you find purpose in what you do?
The short answer is I really believe that we're all here for a reason. And if I can help somebody discover that reason, then that's my purpose.
Super cool. What is one challenge you are currently working to overcome? And let's quantify this a little bit. Non-coronavirus related. Let's go with that.
How much time do we have? You know what my big goal in my business is right now, and this is for all you maybe side hustlers, first-time business owners. Right now, monthly recurring revenue is my Everest. So every month I start over from 0, right? It's how many sales have we made this month? How many new people have we enrolled this month? And something that I tried to create last year but did not succeed at was a really good, sustainable, longer-term offering. So something that made sense for people to invest in for 6 months to a year to 18 months. So that our business could have some more, sustainability, so that if something like this were to happen, which it is happening, that we'd actually have, forward dollars coming in that we could count on, and that it wouldn't require, sales every single month to make sure that we can, stay afloat. So that's the big challenge I have right now is if you have ideas out there, I would love to hear them for, hey, yeah, this is something I would invest, let's say a couple $100 in every month for 6 to 18 months. That's our next business challenge.
And what's the next big dream that you have?
Okay, Michael, my very first book is coming out this year.
Yeah.
It's come out in September. This is like, I've written ebooks before and guides before, and those are all great. But this is like going to have a spine and a physical cover, and I'm going to be able to hold it, and it's going to be sold in quote all major bookstores. And like, I'm just so excited about that. So honestly, my dream for that book, and I know this is cheesy and maybe like a bit much, but I don't care. I want to replace what color is your parachute?
Okay.
Like, I want Unstoppable, the book, to be our generation's go-to clarity strategy. So that if somebody's like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, they're like, oh my God, have you read The Nth Degree? This is your thing. That's my dream.
Super cool. Well, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, we're going to talk about Nth Degree. We're going to talk about what it means to find your ideal career. We're going to talk about the chaos of life and overcoming that and much, much more. It's going to be fun. We'll be right back. Chasing dreams and ideas is hard to do. It's even harder when you do it on your own, and it's even harder when you're isolated because of coronavirus. To overcome these challenges and to help build a community of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers, of people who have amazing ideas, what we've done is we've launched the Jumblethink Facebook group, and we'd love to have you join us over there to continue the conversation about chasing dreams and ideas. We believe you're created for something awesome, so join the Jumblethink community. Share your pain points so we can tackle them together. Share your victories so we can celebrate with you. And let's get those dreams and ideas from a concept and into reality. To make it even easier, all you have to do is head on over to jumblethink.com/group, and it will take you right to the Jumblethink Facebook group. Now let's return to our conversation with today's guest, Tracy Timm. We are back with Tracy. All right, Tracy, before we get rolling on this segment, there's an important question we've got to ask, and that's simply, how can people find and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is set up a landing page, a website for listeners of this show specifically. So they can go to Tracy Timm, TracyTimm.com/jumble. So JUMBLE. And there they're going to be able to get access to a lot of the resources that you and I are about to talk about specifically. So what is the Nth Degree? We have a really cool four video free online course for you to kind of overcome some of that cognitive dissonance we've been talking about and really jumpstart the journey to your dream job. And you can, of course, contact me directly. We offer free they're 50 minutes, so they're almost an hour, introductory strategy calls with people who want to learn more, who want to connect with me directly, who want to talk to one of our head coaches, things like that. So that is the best and easiest place to get in touch with us, and all of our social media lives there, everything. Yeah. Super cool. And we'll have that in the episode notes. You won't have to look far. You can just click on the magical button that takes you into the land of Tracy Timm. All right. Let's talk a little bit about career clarity and what that means. So let's just start right there. What is career clarity, and why do people lack it? I love the phrase career clarity because I don't think many people initially, it catches you off guard, right? When you talk about career counseling, career coaching, career strategy, like career development, most people know, or they assume they know what those things are. Yeah. Even super early on in my business, I had seasoned marketers tell me, you can't use the phrase career clarity because people don't know what that is. And I was like, there's a problem that people don't know what the phrase career clarity means. It means clearly knowing who you are and who you want to be professionally. That's it.
I'm going to stop you right there because you said something that I think is so overlooked. And the more I think about this over the last year, the more I think it's the critical piece. Simon Sinek talks about start with why. A guy named Steve Olsher talks about what's your what. I think that you can't have those conversations until you start with who, your identity, the core. And I think a lot of people are trying to build on offering services or offering this or doing that, and they haven't solved the first problem, which is the who that you mentioned there, the identity issue to build upon for the rest. So why is identity so significant in the journey of career clarity?
So I I believe that without a strong understanding of who you are, what you value, and how you add value in the world, it is really challenging in today's society that is so busy and so noisy to break through to the other side. And marketers will tell you this exact same thing, right? If you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. So if you really want your message to get through, you have to pick a specific person and speak to them. That's the only way that it's really going to resonate with anybody, right? And the same is true in our careers. I think we go out into the world, and because in an abundance of caution, right, we're like, oh, I could do that. I could do that job. I'm applying to all kinds of stuff. I'm open-minded. I'm open to my options, right? And that sounds like the smart thing to do because it keeps you open to more options. But the reality of that is imagine you are on one side of a brick wall and your dream job is on the other side. That mentality is literally you grabbing a big old hammer and running up and just whacking on random places on the wall one at a time, like with no purpose, right? It's like, oh, maybe there's a weak spot here. Maybe there's a weak spot here. Maybe I'll break through over here. If you know who you are, you know what you, so these are the first 3 steps of the nth degree process. I call them now, nature, and nurture.
7 steps, right?
There are 7 total steps. Yes,
okay.
Correct.
And sorry, pause you there. And a lot of people aren't going to realize nth and what that means. I'm a web developer, so we use it in code to actually target things. What is nth? And then let's continue on that conversation. So
the nth degree in my mind is representative of your limitless potential. N is this like unknowable number that's a placeholder for maximum or ideal, and your nth degree is to the highest extent, to the greatest level possible. So if you want to be living an unstoppable life where you feel like you have significance, where you have fulfillment, where you have freedom, where you have finances, I don't want to overlook that. We're not about building an army of starving artists. That, I don't want that. I don't think people want that. And there's a lot of precedent for actually, if you're living and working in your zone of genius, you will make more money. And that can't be overstated. So yeah, the nth degree is really, it was born out of the fact that actually every step in the process starts with the letter N. And then it was just so beautiful that the nth degree has this significance of being your limitless or unknowable, unstoppable potential.
Super cool. All right. So circle back now.
So this is back to like the brick wall example, right? Yeah. If you know your now, your nature, and your nurture, which is now is where are you in your life right now and what do you value? Okay. What are the non-negotiables about how you want to be living your life so that it represents the best and highest version of you and what you value. So, if you truly value family, but your job has you working nights and weekends, you're not living by that value. And so you haven't gotten clear on your now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So first you want to get clear on your now. Where the hell are you in your life? What's going on? And then what do you care about? And how do you get value out of things? What brings you joy? That sort of thing. And then the other 2 pieces, nature and nurture, are the opposite. Those are how you add value in a situation. So you can add value naturally, meaning with little effort. So via your personality, your gifts, your talents, or you can add value via what you've learned over time. That's your knowledge, your skills, and your expertise. So my belief is if you do a really good job discovering those 3 things, meaning pulling all of those puzzle pieces out of yourself, and then you move to step 4, which is defining your niche. That's the next N in the nth degree. If you pull all those pieces together and you know with super specificity how you receive value and how you give value professionally, then instead of running up to the brick wall and just like tapping at it in random places, you get a sledgehammer and you just knock at this one spot until you break through. Okay. It's where all of your effort is going into one pursuit that is so perfectly suited to you that nobody else can compete with you. Because no one else is going to have your exact same now, nature, and nurture. That's the really cool part. It's not just you defining it so that like you look cool and it's literally a place where no one else can compete with you because no one's going to have that same combination of things as you. And that's just super cool. That to me, that's why knowing who you are, that's why that discovery phase is so important, because without it, there's no way you and I could go out in the world and argue for our value with the same level of confidence and certainty and clarity without having done that ahead of time.
I want to take a slight detour here for a second.
Bring it. Yeah.
And that is, we're talking about finding a career clarity, your ideal career. And there's two parts of this question. I'm going to ask the first and hopefully remember the second. And that is when a lot of people think of career, they juxtapose that against job, or they juxtapose it about being an employee, a hireling, a person that comes in and fills a role.
Okay.
So I think of so many people who are doing work that's unfulfilling, but really what they're doing is a job. So talk to us about that pivot from job to career, from that place of being a cog to being a team member or a leader or a founder. Talk to us a little bit about the broader sense of what you mean as career and how that really paints a picture that's slightly different. Because the more I hear you talk about it, I think that you view career differently than a lot of people do, because it's something that, people think about, I work my job so I can live my life. I work my 9 to 5 so I can play for the weekend. I do these things so I can do the things I really want. But what you're talking about seems like it's so much more about a holistic understanding of how a career can bring fulfillment, how a career can bring purpose, how a career can build really significance in what you're offering the world. So talk to us about that.
It's such a multifaceted question, Michael, and there's so many ways we could go with it. I think my brain just landed on two things, which is, first of all, you have to decide whether or not you want your career to be a significant part of the meaning of your life. Meaning, there is no question that your job is going to be a significant part of your life if you have to work.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you have to work to take care of yourself, which is the case for most of us who are not kept or independently wealthy or have some other circumstances where we're not required to work, then your job is inherently 8 hours of your day on average for 5 days of the week on average. Right. And if you look at the math, there are 164 hours in a week. You're going to sleep 7 to 8 of them nightly, and then you're going to work another 40. And so in my mind, knowing that was going to be my reality, because I realized, I'm an only child. I've always had this very independent streak, despite being an absolute extrovert who needs human contact. I just looked at the facts and I was like, okay, so if I can find enough meaning and purpose in the rest of my life to substantiate that these 40 hours that I spend per week working don't need to have any meaning because I get it elsewhere, then maybe that math works. But at the time, seriously, when I was living and working in Connecticut at this Wall Street job, I had amazing friends. I had incredible friends. I went on dates. I would go into the city and go out and have fun. And I had money. I had a great support system in my parents. I had a really great spiritual life. I had all these other things that could have been enough, and they weren't.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that my job and my life and my business is my life, because it's not. I actually just had that realization the other day. I went maybe too far on the other end of the spectrum. And I woke up and was like, nope, having a successful business is not enough. It's not all I want my life to be about.
Yeah.
But going the other way is really challenging too, right? Having these 40 hours a week where maybe you're not allowed to be yourself. Maybe you're not allowed to express what really brings you joy. Maybe you're stressed out the entire 40 hours. Maybe you're pretending to be somebody else for those 40 hours. You know what I mean? So I think first and foremost, you have to decide if you're going to work, yes or no. And then if it's yes, do you want that work to have more significance than money?
Yeah.
Is that going to be enough for you? And that's a really hard question to answer, because until you have the money, you won't know.
Yeah. And it's coming back to that value place that you were talking about as part of the your 7 steps, the nth degree, that you have to understand the values there.
Yeah, you do. And what's really sucky, and this is part of this 4-part video course that I just put together, that you're going to have, that listeners are going to have access to on tracytimm.com/jumble. We are historically and biologically and psychologically horrible predictors of what's going to make us happy.
Yeah.
Horrible. One of the greatest classes I took at Yale and then I got to continue working on after the fact was about happiness and human emotions. And we're really good at this is going to be pleasurable. This is going to be unpleasurable, cuddling with kittens is good, touching the stove is bad, but we're really not good at figuring out how long we're going to be happy and how happy we're going to be.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's both the length and the depth, if you will, of any given emotion. So we overplay how much money is going to make up for our misery, right? And then we underplay how much misery is going to have an impact on the rest of our lives.
So trying to figure out that exchange and trade-off for yourself.
Exactly. And that's why so many people are the first thing they ask me is, well, am I going to have to start from scratch and make no money? It's everybody's first question. And then once we get past that, they're well, what if my dream job doesn't exist? Or what if I'm wrong? What if I get there and the grass isn't any greener?
Yeah.
And that's always question 2. And of course it's question 2. If historically you've been really bad at predicting about what's going to make you happy and looking forward, you're thinking about making a huge life transition, you're going to doubt yourself.
Yeah.
That's normal. But I think it's because we've just not gone about it in a systematic way. You've chosen goals before you've chosen how you want to feel when you achieve those goals. That's why I love, Danielle Laporta has a great thing called the desire map, where she argues that you should set your goals by how you want to feel, not based on the accomplishment.
Yeah.
Right. So if the accomplishment's not going to make you feel the way that you want to feel joyful, then there's no point in having that accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's fake. It's not going to move the needle for you. So yeah, I think I love that question you asked. And like I said, it is so multifaceted. I think the transition from job to career is both one of mindset, because I'll tell you what, there are some people who will live and breathe to be cogs.
Yeah.
They're made to be an admin. They will love every minute of it. They will feel so useful and valuable. And that's a beautiful thing, because companies need those people.
Yes.
They don't need those people just, hey, you're only going to have to do this for a year and then you can, elevate or whatever, it's called now. It's something we just had a girl graduate from one of our workshops who's she is made to do compliance and regulation, and she lives to serve people, in not that she's doing anything in particular other than making sure everyone else knows what they need to be doing and nothing falls through the cracks. She wants to be that person. I wanted to throw up listening to her ideal career. It sounded awful to me, but that's the point.
Yeah.
If you're doing work that has no other purpose than paying your bills, you have a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're doing work that has purpose in addition to paying your bills, then I think you're on your way to having sustainable work and a career. But that's just me.
Yeah.
And again, this is all semantics too, right? Job, work, career, it's whatever you think of it as.
Yeah.
And just because it's labeled work doesn't mean you have to hate it. And just because it's a job for now doesn't mean it can't be a stepping stone to a career. I mean, we can leverage everything. That's why step 3 in the process is nurture. It's because I don't want people to feel like they've wasted time, and I don't think time is wasted unless you don't use it, unless you waste it. Yeah. Whew. I feel like I need a shot or a glass of wine after that. I don't know.
So many people are waiting for perfection. They're waiting for one day where everything aligns and everything seems like it's going to go their way, that all things are going to come together. And they wait for the perfect career. They wait for the perfect opportunity, and it never comes. It never comes. They wait for the day that they can do or have the freedom that they don't have to work so hard. I hate that philosophy of waiting for one day. So talk to us a little bit about moving through the fear of my dream isn't going to my dream job. There's no way it's going to work out, or the fears that we face, the obstacles of that to getting from one day, this will be my perfect ideal, to why don't you do it today?
Yeah. So first and foremost, back when I was starting my business, I was just like glomming onto every guru that was out there, the Marie Forleos and the whatevers of the world. And so I found Brendan Burchard, who I bought everything that he'd ever written and done and just like consumed it all. He has this incredible video called like How to Know It's Time to Quit, I think is actually what it's called. And in the first 30 seconds, he's like, listen, if you're looking for a sign, it's the perfect time. This is my sign. It's divinely inspired. He's like, the sign is the fact that you're looking for a sign. That's your sign. Like, don't wait for anything else. That is the sign. Because if your soul or whatever, your heart is pulling you to look for something as an excuse to make a change, that is your excuse. I can't say it any more clearly than that. The second thing is that these fears are real. They're really real. I deeply hear every one of the clarity calls that I take, because I do 50-minute free strategy calls with people who want to connect with me or just want to learn more about our programs. Every single one of those calls, the deepest, darkest fear is I'm going to take this risk. I'm going to spend this time. I'm going to spend this money, and I'm not going to figure it out. Or I'm going to figure it out and it doesn't exist. Like my dream to what I was made for isn't a thing. There's no job for it. There's no outlet for it as a profession. And so I'm, you're better off with the devil than the devil you don't. And so the devil is hating your job and wondering, and you're comfortable with that. The devil you don't know is I took a risk and what's going to happen. I would say to that, the number one thing that gets me going and pushing past my own perfectionism, which has been a childhood endeavor, is that I was on, so after I quit my job, part of my own self-discovery journey was actually going on a semester at sea. Okay. So I quit my job, I re-enrolled in school, I found some financial aid somewhere, and I went for 6 months living on a boat, sailing around the world with a bunch of they were all undergrads. I was 25, so I was like mama bear. and I was jaded, right? So I was like, never graduate, stay here. And so I went around the world, and close to the end of the trip, I still hadn't figured out exactly what I wanted to do. And I was getting really anxious because I thought this investment was only worth it if I get my next job here or whatever. And I had a guy who, coincidentally, who's a professor on the ship. He was a Yale grad as well. The Yale team had won the hockey national championship while we were on the boat. So he and I were celebrating. And so we sat down, and he was a professor of social psychology, believe it or not.
All right.
And so I literally was at my wit's end, and I was like, listen, do I just suck it up and go back to the job that I had before? I'm sure they'll hire me back, or somebody else will hire me to do what I was doing. It's, I don't know how sustainable it is, but in the absence of knowing exactly what I want to do, is that better? Or should I stay on this path to finding my true north, even though I'm not really sure how I'm going to get there? And he said, listen, in the world of psychology, there are two types of regrets that a human being can have. That's it. You can regret something that you did wrong, and then you can regret something that you chose not to do. Okay. That's it. So regrets, they're called sins of commission. That's something you did. And sins of omission. That's something you did not. Okay. And the way that our brains work is that the brain really likes closed loops. It likes beginnings, middles, and ends to stories, right? And it likes to put things in boxes. That's how we function in a world where we have millions of stimuli coming at us in any given moment. And so sins of commission, right, where let's say you cheated, you lied, you stole, and you got caught, you feel really bad, right? They hurt. But they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, so they go away. It hurts, but you can look back at something you regretted doing when you were little and you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, but it's not haunting you, in your sleep today. Sins of omission, regrets for things we never did, the brain doesn't have an end to latch on to. And so what happens is you have the beginning, you chose, you had a choice, you had a middle, you chose not to, but you have no end. And so your brain, despite its knowledge that it is illogical to do this, is going to continue to search for an answer. And that's why we don't regret the things we did wrong when we're 90 years old, sitting on a porch with our cat in our lap with an Afghan around us. We regret the things we didn't do. at all, right? And so my litmus test for people is imagine yourself at 90, looking back on your life and telling the story of your life to your grandkids.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to regret telling them, yeah, I had this option, this opportunity to find what I really wanted to do? Or secretly, I bet you when you're 90, you're going to admit to yourself the thing that you really want to do, that secretly you want to do right now, but you're not owning it because you don't think it's real. You don't think it's possible. You don't think it's going to pay you, insert whatever, right? When you're 90, you're going to own it. You're going to be like, wow, I always wanted to be a insert thing. And then you're going to have to tell people that you didn't do it, or you're just going to have to live with that yourself. And to me, once I realized that this is actually the line he told me. He's like, Tracy, it is always worth taking your meaningful shot for the stars because you'll know what happened. Mm. It may not work out the way you wanted. It may be a total failure. It may be great, but you're gonna know.
Yeah.
And it's the not knowing that's gonna haunt you more than the failure would ever haunt you. And at that point I was like, well, shit, I'll just put stuff out, like if it's not ready, that's fine. Like I'd rather know what people think about it and then make it better than hold on to it until it's perfect and then release it. And maybe it's never going to be perfect enough to release it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if it's the fear that's holding you back, please realize that you will never fear more the not doing than the doing. And that's what keeps me doing. Yeah.
Super cool. Well, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, it's rapid fire questions.
Placez votre électrophone à portée de votre main. Levez seulement le bras pour mettre l'aiguille sur le disque.
If you're a longtime listener, you've probably heard us talk about idea camps, and we're super excited to announce that we are launching virtual idea camps next week. We're starting out with 2 special workshops, all done virtually, so you can do it from the comforts of your house, as we now have to do with coronavirus anyway. And we don't want you to miss these idea camps, these virtual idea camps. To stay in the loop, head on over to jumblethink.com and sign up for our newsletter. By the way, you might be wondering, what are the first 2 classes? Well, we're doing one class on an introduction to creating your own podcast, and a second event on do-it-yourself website building tools like Squarespace. They're really fun, and we don't want you to miss out on it. So head on over to jumblethink.com, sign up for that newsletter, and be the first to know when we launch the new idea camps. And now let's jump into rapid fire questions with Tracy Timm. We are back with Tracy. Before we dive into this, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, and that's simple. Well, it's not simple. It's a very complicated question, but hopefully it's not too bad.
All right, bring it.
So with coronavirus and a lot of people questioning everything, their careers, how they work, where they work, what they do, the unknown of finances, the unknown of food, the unknown of any kind of semblance of a normal supply of toilet paper. No matter what it is, there's a lot of fears going on and a lot of people are questioning. So it's a good time to have this conversation simply because people might be questioning what they're going through. What are a couple of things you would tell them right now as they take stock of where they're at? If they take stock at what's working, what's not working, what are the few tips that you would give them in this season of questioning, the season of unknowing that sets them up to be proactive for a better future?
Yeah. Well, this is such a good question. So I know that your peeps love action-oriented stuff. So I'm going to give you literally the first 2 steps in the nth degree process.
Awesome.
This is where I would start no matter who you are, if you're corporate, if you have a side gig, if you're full-time employed by yourself, if you have 100 employees, whoever you are, right? If you're stuck working from home and you have some spare, if you have an hour, this is where I would spend it. So the first thing that you want to do is just what I call a life audit.
Okay.
So you can separate your life. I separate it into 8 categories. And I'm going to try to name them off the top of my head, even though this is going to be challenging. So you have your physical life, you have your emotional life, you have your spiritual life, your professional life, your social life, your intellectual life, your environmental life, and did I say financial? Your
No,
financial life?
I don't
Okay,
think so.
financial. That's number 8. Okay, and that's how I like to break it up. I have actually, and I'll make sure that this is added to that web page that we're going to share with people. I have a free download of this that they can. It's a worksheet for a life audit. So it's those 8 areas, and I just want you to just ask yourself, like, what's going well in this area, and what I like to call EBNTs, which is even better next time.
Okay.
If what's going well, and what would I like to improve, change, add to, remove, etc. Right? In each of these major areas, and just be honest, like be super honest and objective about where your life is in relation to your expectations for what you want in your life, right? So if something's not bringing you joy, own it. If something's bringing you a lot of joy, put a circle around it, So I would recommend to do that and to take between 5 and 10 minutes for each area of your life. And that's going to give you a really nice foundation of what's really going well that you can leverage. So when I did this the first time, it was the Wall Street thing. And it's really easy when you hate your job, or you're in a moment of transition and you're questioning everything, to just categorically go, my life is shit, right? Like it's really easy to do that, especially when it's a part of your life that's really pervasive, like your job, because it does flow into every other part of your life. But if you do this really objectively, you're going to see that there's probably at least 3 to 5 things that are actually going really, really well. So maybe you've stocked away a bunch of money and it happens to not be in the stock market right now. Or maybe you've got a great support system, a family or a set of friends who will go to the mat for you. Or, maybe your spiritual life is just super on point and you feel very grounded and very faithful. Whatever it is, you're going to have a handful of things. Those were the 3 things for me. I had saved up a bunch of money because I was squirreling that away in case of a rainy day because I hated my job. And I had a really great support system in my 2 parents and a great group of friends. I had rented. I didn't even own a goldfish. Like I had nothing keeping me there, which turned out to be very helpful. And I had a really solid spiritual practice. And so that's what I used as my sort of foundation to move forward. So I would challenge you to do the audit and then at the end, come up with your 3 to 5 things. Like, what are you living for right now? Then the second step is to figure out your freaking core values at this moment of your life. And I know this is like a cheesy, my core values. No, it's literally like, what are the non-negotiables in your life? What are the rules by which you live to maximize your joy and your impact and your meaningfulness, and it's every single person's core values are different. I love this. I redo this practice for myself once a year. Okay. Every year. So in January, I did the life audit. I did my core values. I turned the core values into commitments. But I would really challenge you as step 2 to sit down and just brainstorm. I call this the 10, 20, 30 way to do your core values. So for 10 minutes, just brainstorm like what comes to mind when you think of what brings you joy or where you want to spend your time or who you want to surround yourself with or whatever. Right. And these can be phrases. They can be value words, whatever comes to mind. Like, cuddly kittens is always one of my first things because I just love, and I have 2. And so they're one of my values. Then in the second part, the 20 minutes, go to corevalueslist.com. There's 500 words listed and just look through and see what resonates with you for 20 minutes. And you add those words to your list, right? Then for the 30 minutes, you want to start grouping them together because you're going to find that like cuddly kittens and love and affection and a really comfy blanket and like all those things come together to be one idea for you. And maybe that idea is called, all the feels, or it's called cuddles, or it's called love or whatever, right? They're your values. So you want to make them resonate with you, right? Okay. It doesn't matter what they're called to anybody else. If they make sense to you, they make sense to you. And I think if you have a really strong objective life audit and a really clear set of core values, you don't want to have many more than 10. I would say 7 to 10 is probably what you want to have a goal towards. Then you're going to see immediately what is out of alignment in your life. You can't hide from it anymore because now you've got your audit and you've got your values and you're looking at your reality, and then it's going to force you into cognitive dissonance. It's going to force you to ask yourself, do I really hold these values to be true and dear? And if so, what am I going to change about my life? Yeah. Right? Or this is where the fear comes in, right? It's like, but I think what holds your feet to the fire is having gotten clear on what you do value, absent of having to look through any specific lens, of your life.
Yeah.
So when you force yourself into that dissonance, then you're actually asking yourself, do these things really matter to me?
Yeah.
And if they do really matter to me, what changes am I going to make? Or what additions am I going to make? What am I going to remove? What boundaries am I now going to set? How am I going to treat people differently? It's all those things that are then going to contribute to, okay, this is how I make a really well-informed step forward. That's it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super cool. All right. You ready for rapid fire questions?
I'm super excited. Yes.
Okay.
So, no, I'm not excited at all, Michael. Yeah, bring it on. I'm really curious about this.
So the first question is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I had no idea.
All right.
Zero.
Good answer.
I had zero idea. That was my story my whole life. Yeah. No idea.
What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
A big idea or a dream and you don't know where to start. So the first thing that came to my mind is can you find somebody who is doing something similar out in the world and figure out what they did? So if your big dream is to write a book, if your big dream is to own a business, if your big dream is to start the next Google, figure out what your dream really is for you. Again, absent of anybody else's definition of success.
Yeah.
And then you're not the first person to have this dream, first of all. So go find somebody else who's either already doing it or has done it and figure out what they did, and then figure out how you can make that process better, faster, stronger, etc.
What is one change you would like to see in the world?
Ooh. Okay, I really think, and this is topical for me from a business perspective, I feel like we're very well educated if the purpose of our education is to turn us into professors and teachers. I feel as though whether it's societally or parents are not well equipped to do this or schools just don't prioritize it, I don't feel like people graduate even from high school or college with a solid sense of how to understand themselves and how to make good decisions.
Yeah.
So I would love to see more some shift somewhere in education, maybe not systemically, but maybe it's just societally that we start actually asking kids, what do you want to be before they're 18? But it's like, I think that if we could teach people how to understand themselves better, I think that would go a long way.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, this is so good. I want the nth degree to be proven go-to methodology that serves whatever I answered in the last question. Meaning I would love that to be curriculum. I'd love it to be the go-to, your kid's graduating, this is the book you want to buy them. Yeah. You're a mom transitioning back to the workforce after staying at home, this is the book for you. Oh, you're about to retire and you want a bonus career, this is the book for you. Oh, you're coming back from the army, you don't know what to do professionally, this is the book for you. I would love the nth degree and the phrase, be unstoppable. The book title is Unstoppable, to be synonymous with a proven methodology for knowing yourself better and knowing how you add value in the world and being able to advocate for that value.
Where do you find inspiration?
Where do I find inspiration? So I'm Catholic, and up until the eradication of mass, this virus, I was going religiously, and I tend to get a lot of inspiration from my spiritual life.
Yeah.
And I look to other people who really understand me and my heart, that I've opened up to and been very authentic with, to re-inspire me when I'm lacking inspiration.
Yeah.
And then I really get it from my clients. Like when I talk to somebody who's miserable, I feel like I'm on one side of a canyon and they're on the other, and it's my job to help them feel good jumping. And then to carry them while they're jumping. And that always re-inspires me, that when I'm down on, I don't know, you get tired, as an entrepreneur, it's just like, you're on all the time. And there are days where I'm like, I want to sleep until noon. And in fact, that's happened in the last week. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think you have to lean in and get re-inspired pretty routinely to have a long, sustainable career in being in business for yourself.
What is one book you think every dreamer should read?
If Life is a Game, These Are the Rules by Dr. Cherie Carter Scott. It is a coffee table book. It was inspired by a list that she wrote for the very first printing of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh.
And it is must read for anybody who wants to live an intentional life.
For you, how do you define success?
This is like my Everest. I have an ever-changing definition of success.
Yeah.
Honestly. And that's probably not an answer that clients or potential clients want to hear. Because, you know, what I teach people is that the key to finding sustainable success is deviating from perhaps what other people deem to be successful.
Yeah.
And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I first started out speaking professionally was from a fellow professional speaker who said, you know, ask 100 people in here what success looks like, and you're going to get all different answers. Like, before you start taking advice from other people, define what success is like for you so that you don't get distracted by everybody else's crap. You know, like maybe somebody else's success is 100 speaking gigs a year. Do you even want to travel that much? If not, that's not your version of success, and that's okay. So right now, my version of success is sustainability. Yeah. Can I continue to do this and have an impact doing this for longer than a flash in the pan? And I think once you've identified that, that's your personal success. And so because I'm still playing a role in my business where I'm more in the business than on the business than I would prefer to be, my definition of success is still evolving. It really is.
What is one trend you're currently excited about?
One trend that I'm currently excited about. I love that Spanx are now pants.
Okay.
No, what is one trend that I'm really excited about? This is really, okay, I have to tell you, Michael, and this is totally me being honest and authentic. I am so out of the loop. Like, I don't read the news consistently. I don't know what the kids are wearing these days. Like, I have one full-time person who's our head coach. So she coaches actually the online program that I was talking about, and she is incredible. She comes in and she's like, girl, what are you wearing? Like, oh my God, no, like hair clips are in, that whatever you're doing with your hair is out. Like she keeps me on the straight and narrow. So trend wise, I usually don't know what's going on until I'm way behind the 8 ball, but I love, you know what I really love is, expression via like pictures and words. So I love memes. I love GIFs. I love that we're that's part of our vernacular now, and it's how people text. And, you know, even my mom is using GIFs, which is hysterical. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. That's my answer.
What is one habit you find helpful in your life?
Ooh, habits. This is another one of my own personal Everests. I tend to be the type of person that's like, freedom is freedom and routine is confinement. And I'm having to embrace more and more that actually freedom will set you free, routine will set you free. We'll see, look at that Freudian slip right there. So habit wise, you know, I can't say that I have a whole ton of them. The one that's the most helpful to me in my life is that I pray almost on a habitual basis. Like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, thank you for this day. And I fall asleep at night saying, wow, these are all the things that happened, and this was the good and the bad, and thank you anyway. And you know, that kind of stuff. And then I have a really strong routine attendance to mass and things like that. So I think regardless of whatever else has been going on in my life, and there's been a lot of ups and downs and turmoil and losing people and losing jobs and, you know, a lot of things that were not savory or fun to go through that could have really broken me in a lot of ways and did. My spiritual habitual practice, I think, has been the foundation for my life.
What's one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
Define first started out. Like out of the womb, out of college, where?
Whatever you want to define that as.
So let me go back. So when I was 27, I think 26, 27 is when I started my business. I was introduced to a behavioral assessment called the Predictive Index. So if you don't know about that, I would just Google Predictive Index. It's fascinating. I was given the assessment and then ended up, actually, I still work with that company pretty closely. implementing the assessment in companies and that sort of thing. And I remember the first time I read my assessment results, and my initial impression was, oh my God, if I had known this when I was graduating college, I never would have gone to Wall Street. I never, like, I would have dodged so many bullets. So I would say that assessment alone would have helped, but really what it means is just a deeper understanding and appreciation for my own gifts and knowing how my personality added value professionally so that I could redefine success like that. You know what I mean? As opposed to one version of success and having to fit into that mold. Yeah.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
If you asked me that like 5 to 7 years ago, I would say like married with kids, but you can't really force that.
No, you can't.
I mean, you can, but I don't know how sustainable it is. Now, if I wasn't doing this professionally, I would probably be working for a company that had a really progressive idea of a people strategy. So something like a Google or a Facebook where they have a people department as opposed to a traditional HR department. And I would just love to be helping those individuals find their unique genius zone so that they could be more aligned with the work that they're doing within that company and add more value and get more value back. So I think I'd be doing the exact same thing. I just wouldn't be working for myself.
And our final rapid fire question is, what is one dream you are still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
One dream that I'm still wanting to fulfill in my own life. Oh man, I want my Oprah moment. You know, like I want to be where the, no, I want to have a really just killer impact and have a stage like that. I don't need to be Oprah or whatever, but I just would love to have the value of what I've created be appreciated in a big way. Yeah. I think if people are really honest, that might sound, I don't know, egotistical or whatever, but I think we all want to feel appreciated and we want to feel like what we do is impactful. And I get so much out of each of the individuals who graduate from our program whenever they're like, you've changed my life. I didn't know I could be this happy. I never thought my niche existed. Like those are the things we hear on a daily, weekly basis. It's really cool. But I think I secretly also would love like, Oprah's endorsement or like somebody that I've followed saying, wow, I love what she's doing and you should love it too. And that sort of thing. So I don't know. I think that, and then I want to go to all 7 continents. And I've been to 5. So I'd check off 2 more and that would be a nice dream as well. Yeah.
As we wrap up, we always like to have our guest have a final thought. What's your final thought for all of us listening today?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to turn this on its head a little bit, and I'm going to say that you're never done. Like, that is a final thought for today. I want people to know that let's say you come work with me and you go through the nth degree as a process. It's done for now, but you're not done. Right. As one of my business coaches says, she's like, when you start out on any journey, there's you version sub-0, and then there's your goal, also version sub-0, right? And as you love this, right? You're like, yes, nth degree and subs and whatever. As you're progressing towards goal sub-0, you actually become a different person. You become you sub-1, this new version of yourself, and you sub-1 now has goal sub-1, right? Like, you've changed, you've grown, you've evolved. And so then as you're progressing towards goal sub-1, you become what else? You version sub-2, right? And then you create this new goal. So I think that if you have that mindset, life becomes less about success and failure and more about continued progress towards a better version of yourself. And that's what I hope to be, is just a continued progress at becoming the best version of myself and releasing the need or the pressure to have each individual thing be a success or a failure.
Well, Tracy, thank you so much for taking time out, being on Jumblethink, and sharing your story and inspiring us. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you today.
Thank you. I love this format. I love what you're doing in the world, Michael. And I hope that people really get something out of this and something valuable. So thank you for having me. Thank you for the platform. And I wish you and your audience like all the best. All the best.
Once again, we want to thank Tracy Timm for taking time out and being on the show with us today. You can find her links in the episode notes. Go check out what she's doing. I think it will really encourage you. Now, here's my final thought for you today. It is a crazy time. It is a crazy season. It is a weird season for all of us. It is also a great time to reflect on what you value, what you're doing, what you're creating. If your life isn't looking the way you want it to, this is the perfect time to start making the pivot out into the life you want. It's never been better to really pause and reflect than it is right now. And I know fear could be gripping you. I know that things may seem hopeless, but I want to encourage you, this is going to pass. And what you do during the next week or two could set you up to see your dreams and ideas become a reality. So take some time today or tomorrow and sit down with a tablet with a pen or pencil and just begin to write. Think about the things that you want to do. Write those down. Think about the dreams that you've always been waiting to do one day. Write those down. Think about the things that make you excited, that burn inside of you with passion. Write those down. And then begin to sift through that list and see what comes to the top of that list for you. And then begin to create a strategy to take a small step and then another step and another step. And then one day, that dream will become a reality. And you'll no longer be living in the life that you had, but the life that you always wanted. That's my challenge for you today. Take some time to really do the work, to reflect, to move past the fear that you may be facing and into the dreams of the future. It's your turn now. You've got to do the work, so dream big and change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.